Hey everyone. So today what I want to talk about is how we can leverage Zerto to do a SQL cluster move from one site to another. So here in my lab, I have a two-node SQL cluster set up at site 1, and the goal of this is to move it over to site 2. Both VMware, they are different versions of VMware, that doesn't matter. But essentially we just want to migrate SQL clustering from site 1, site 2. Uh, at Site 1, as of right now, what we have is a node called Carver. That's my active node. And then I have another node called Goldfinger. That's the passive node in the cluster. So there you go. You can see they're both in the cluster. They're both up. Currently, the roles are both on Carver. Um, SQL is doing its thing. I've got a test database out here that I'm using PowerShell to insert some records into. As you can see, it's if I refresh this every second, it basically what it's doing is it's inserting a timestamp and this 10-character random hash value into the database, and that's just what it's doing the whole time that we're going to be talking today. Um, so anyway, database is working. We can fail over. Here's my Goldfinger node, and essentially everything's good to go at site 1. But what we want to do is we actually want to get this guy over to site 2. So the first part of the process is essentially to use Zerto to protect our Carver node or our active node in the cluster. If you have services, be it SQL or file services or whatever on another node, the prereq for this to work is that all services that are inside the cluster sharing disks need to be moved to a single node, and then that node that's active for all those roles are what we're going to move first. So basically all my roles are on Carver. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here to Zerto, and we're going to go ahead and create a new virtual protection group. We're going to call it SQL Active Node, and then we're going to go ahead and select Carver, put him into the list, hit next. Replication, we're going to select Site 2. I'm going to go ahead and select my Site 2 cluster, my VNX data store. I'm not going to explain a lot of this other stuff in Zerto here, like the SLA policies and stuff. If you're a current Zerto customer, you kind of know how that stuff works. If you're not a Zerto customer, essentially what it's doing is it's setting up the history and things like that. But for a migration, we don't really need more than a day of history. So I'm just going to leave it all the defaults. Going to hit next. And then what you see here is basically all the source disks and the destination. I'm using eager 0 thick VMDKs at the source side. I'm going to move them to physical RDMs at the destination. So what I need to do here is I need to come through and select all my RDMs that I want to move to. My C drive, my 40 gig C drive, I'm going to leave that at VMDK. I don't need that to be changed. But basically what I do is I come through and I map out all my disks for the destination side. And I've obviously already pre-created the RDMs on my array. But anyway, basically you want to map source disks to destination disks. Once you have all that done, you can go ahead and hit next. Pick the network settings where you want to attach your disk to or your VM to. So I just want to go to Site 2 Production VLAN. This is all the port groups you already have set up in VMware. Again, I'm not going to explain all of Zerto, but basically, pick where you need this node to move to. If you want to do IP address changes, you can do that here. I'm not going to, just because I don't need to. But if you do need to, you can go ahead and set that stuff up there. Don't need to worry about the backup, and then we go ahead and hit done. So what it's going to do is it's going to start an initial synchronization of the active SQL node from Site 1 to Site 2. My SQL server is only about 80 gigabytes, and it's on a 10 gig network, so it's fairly quick. This could take a day, a week, a month, whatever, depending on how much data you have, how quick your connection speed is, all that good stuff. But the important thing to note is that SQL is not down. You know, if I, as all this stuff's happening, if I come back over to Carver, hop into SQL, I can still see that, you know, I'm still getting records into SQL, right? So this is all done in the background. It's kind of prep work before the cutover date. Um, so essentially, the first thing to do is just get Zerto set up to protect that node, and then you know, basically wait until your cutover day. So as this guy starts syncing, I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video, just because I think it takes it like 10 minutes to get everything set up and synced over. Not gonna talk the whole time, but as soon as it gets close to being done, I will pop back in, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are. Okay, I'm back. Obviously, the sync completed, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago. I went ahead and grabbed some lunch, and now we're back. Anyway, also, just a good example, right? You don't have to sit here and babysit this thing. It'll run forever, right? So, essentially, tell it to sync, go do whatever it is you need to do. Whenever it's time to do the cutover, then, you know, then it's still going to be in sync, ready to go. As you can see, our script's running. It does give us a couple of IOPS, so it is actually changing a little bit of data. You know, as far as actual on the disk, not a whole lot, but enough for a lab. All right. So again, the process that we want to do, I'll go ahead and get logged back into these guys. The process that we want to do is get these nodes over to site 2. So to do that, what we'll do again is verify that all of our services, and this is very important, that's why I keep going over it, all of our services are still on our active node. If you run into a situation where the services have ran on your secondary node, and then you've moved them back, make sure that you come into Zerto and you tell it to do a force synchronization. It's not a full sync, but it will cause corruption if you don't do that and the services move around. So anyway, we're at the state, our services are all on the right node, we're ready to proceed, and so the first step is actually to shut down our passive node. So I'm going to go ahead and come into Goldfinger, tell him to do a shutdown. You know, just tell it we're going to move some stuff around. Go. So that guy will be offline. What we should then see is that our nodes over here, Goldfinger's down. The reason we do this is kind of twofold. The main one being that when I tell Zerto to move this active node, I don't want Goldfinger trying to take over the services at Site 1. I want him to stay off, stay out of the mix, and that way it kind of goes smoothly. So, Carver's still online, still accepting SQL requests. You know, we're still adding data here. So when you're ready to do your cutover, we do not use the failover button. Failover button means that you're going to lose 13 seconds of data, or you know, whatever your RPO is. The better option is to come in here and do the move VPG function. Select your SQL active node, or whatever you called your VPG. Go ahead and change the commit policy to something, the default timeout to something other than 0, or if you're like me, you switch it to none. And this is simply so that I'm in control of how much time I get to test it when it goes to the other side. You don't need to worry about reverse protection at this time if you're doing the none. If you're doing auto with a time period, go ahead and check reverse protection if you want the data to be reverse protected. And then go ahead and hit next and start move. What's going to happen is you'll see SQL here start to do a shutdown. You'll see that it's still online right now. So our data is going to be, you know, 11:38 and some odd seconds is kind of the last checkpoints that we should have in there. Maybe 11:38 and 30 seconds or so. So that guy will shut down at Site 1. You notice Goldfinger's already shut off, and that's key. Goldfinger shut down. Carver, we're telling to shut down via Zerto. So both nodes are down. SQL is officially down at this point. Kind of start the downtime clock. What you'll see then is Zerto creates Carver at the other side. takes us, you know, a couple of seconds, maybe maybe a minute at the most, to essentially get the disks the way we want them, so that we can power that guy on. You'll see all kinds of tasks come down here at the bottom. You'll see us moving some files around. You'll see us reconfiguring VRAs and Carver. You'll see us deleting a few files. All that's normal. There goes the moves. So all that stuff's normal. Don't fret. If you notice, Carver hasn't left the other side, so if something were to go wrong, we still got our original one. It'll just look like you rebooted your SQL cluster. Not the end of the world. But I've done this 100 times, so I haven't had it fail on me. So pretty confident in it. So Carver's booting up. We'll give it a minute to start here, just because I'm running a version of the vSphere client that gets super grumpy whenever the resolution changes. So once I see VMware Tools reporting, I'll go ahead and open up the console. We'll verify that we can ping our domain controller, verify that SQL services are running, the failover cluster services are running, and that everything looks normal, right? Verify that everything's good to go on this node. So we're ready to log in. Go ahead and do that. And we'll do our ping test. Ping DC1. Active Directory is a must. So we can ping our domain controller. I'm going to go ahead and start up Failover Manager to see if our services are running. They should be, though, because we can see all three of the disks here. So that tells me that services should all be up and running. We'll just double check. Roles. Yep, they're both running. So then we should be able to go ahead and actually kick off our PowerShell script, and it is starting to insert stuff again. So let's go ahead and open up SQL Management Studio, and we'll verify to see how much data was actually lost, or not lost, but how much downtime we had, rather. So if you remember right, we said 11:38 and some odd seconds was probably our last insert before the move to Site 2. Started this script probably 11:41 or so, would be my guess. So let me minimize this. We'll get that other script running here. Wrong button. So 11:42. So right there. So 11:38:23, 11:41:37. So what, 9, 10, 11. So 3 minutes 25, 24 seconds, something like that. So basically 3.5, 4 minutes of downtime. That's what it took to move the SQL cluster. If you have to change virtual IP addresses for the cluster and all that stuff, obviously it's going to be a little bit longer. But if you're simply just trying to move from one stack of hardware to another, downtime super minimal. So where we are right now is we have a working SQL cluster at Site 2. The catch is that we only have one node in the cluster. Right? So if I come over to nodes, Goldfinger's still down. As a matter of fact, he's still sitting over here at Site 1. We want him at Site 2. So the first thing we can do before we do anything with Goldfinger is come back into Zerto and go ahead and commit to moving Carver. We can go ahead and tell it to reverse protect if we want to. That's fine. So at this point, what Zerto will do with Carver is get out of the way, right? So essentially, Zerto kind of sits in the right stream a little bit in a non-committed state for a virtual machine. So what we're doing is we're basically getting out of the way, and you'll see that this icon on your node, SQL Node 1, or in my case Carver, it's going to switch from this managed icon to a normal icon, kind of like the Kananga here. That basically indicates that Zerto has gotten out of the way. You'll also see these tasks down here complete and whatnot too. In the meantime, though, what we want to do is we want to get Goldfinger to Site 2. To do that, we need to do a few things before we set up Zerto. And I'll show you why. So if we go ahead and we just say, hey, we want to do node 2 And we want to add Goldfinger to the list. And we want to go ahead and pick site 2 as our recovery site. We'll go ahead and throw it in the cluster, add the VNX. Here's the problem. So this is our C drive, the bottom one here, the 40 gigabyte thin disk. But it wants to replicate all my RDMs again. I don't want it to do that because obviously we already have a copy. These are actually old, right? Because we have new copies of them. So we only want the C drive of Goldfinger. So cancel that. Let me go into my vSphere client here and do a refresh. So on Goldfinger, what we need to do is we need to remove all of our cluster disk. So basically all of the ones that are grayed out because they were shared, we just want to remove them. We want to do one other thing while we're in here as well, which is set our boot option to boot to the BIOS the next time. Right, so the force BIOS setup, I want to go ahead and check that box, hit OK. And the last thing we need to do is we actually need to power on Goldfinger because Zerto can't do an initial replication of a VM that's not powered on. So we'll go ahead and power him on. Yeah, it's fine there, just telling us we need to power on the VM. So now Goldfinger is powered on, and if we open up the console, what we'll find is that it's in the BIOS. Do not exit the BIOS screen, simply because we don't really want Windows to start up and try to take over services or anything else. So just leave it at the BIOS, close the console, come back into Zerto. We'll run the same create VPG wizard again. We'll tell it node 2. Go ahead and hit next. We'll pick Goldfinger. If you notice, it's only 48 gigs now, not 80. Add him to the list. Hit next. Again, we'll pick site 2. Go ahead and pick our cluster and our VNX or whatever storage you have. Again, we don't need to worry about the SLA stuff. But now if you notice, we only are replicating the C drive. That's all we wanted. That's all we got. So go ahead and hit next. Tell it what networks to attach to at the site 2. Basically just fly on through the rest of the settings. If you need to change the IP on this VM as well, go ahead and tell it what to do. If you're like me, I don't need to, so we're just going to hit next, next, and finish. So what Zerto's going to do now is it's going to replicate the other node, node 2, Goldfinger in my case, but it's only replicating the C drive because we don't care about the RDMs on node 2. Realistically, all it is a C drive to us. So we're going to go ahead and replicate that over. It'll probably take 10 minutes for the lab to do that. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video again. But as soon as it gets done, we'll pick back up. Again, SQL is up and running. So Carver, in terms of if you're concerned about downtime for SQL, SQL is no longer down. You just don't have the ability to fail over to a second node at site 2 yet. But if you watch down here the timestamps, they are updating. So for all intents and purposes, to your end users, SQL's back online and working. Everything else we're going to do to move over the second node is completely transparent to the end user. So the initial sync is started. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and as soon as it's done and starting to report an RPO, we'll jump back in. All right. So we got node 2 sync to site 2. So basically at this point we are ready to move him over. So just to reiterate, we are basically replicating Goldfinger, node 2 in my SQL cluster, to site 2, so that we can rejoin him in with Carver, who is node 1 in the cluster. To do this, pretty simple. Same thing as last time. I'm going to do a move. We're going to select node 2 this time. We're going to go ahead and set the commit policy to none. And we're going to check the force shutdown box this time. The reason we need to do that is because VMware Tools is not running. It's sitting at that BIOS screen. So we need basically VMware just to do a power off, not a shutdown. Hit next, start move, get Zerto out of the way. What you'll see is Zerto will power off Goldfinger. You'll see us create it at site 2, and then we'll go ahead and power it up. How you do the order at site 2 for Goldfinger, It's kind of up to you. It's going to work either way. You're not going to be able to fail any services over to it though until you essentially add the disks, the shared disks from Carver back onto Goldfinger. But if you want to verify that Goldfinger is able to talk on the network and everything looks good, you can do that without adding the disks back in. So if you want to go ahead and let Goldfinger start up, Zerto is going to start it. You can either shut it off right away, add the disks in, or what you can do is you can verify that networking is working first, and basically verify the network first, then shut it down, add the disks in, start it back up, and then you can actually fail services back and forth between the nodes. So I'm going to give it a few seconds here, just like the first time, just so we can kind of get all the crazy VMware client errors to go away. And then we'll open this guy up here in just a second. So we'll go ahead and open. Once we see tools is kind of running here, we will try to do two things. Ping our domain controller and ping Carver. Once we verify that those two things are working, I'm going to go ahead and commit the move. So we'll come in here, ping DC1. Yep, we're good there. Ping Carver. Good there. Alright, so this guy's good to go. The move worked, right? You'll notice that we're only going to see a C drive. And what we need to do next is come back into Zerto. Go ahead and commit. So this is node 2. We're going to go ahead and commit that move. I don't need to reverse protect him right now, so I'm just going to uncheck that, hit commit. And that will, just like the first time, get Zerto out of the way on this VM. You notice it still has the managed by icon. So what we're going to do is wait for that managed by icon to go away. And then what we'll do is we'll power off Goldfinger and get those shared disks added back to it. What I'm doing here is watching it kind of commit the last little bit of change data. What it's doing during this promoting process is essentially taking any of the data that's in the scratch disk and any data that's in the journal files, and it's compressing it all down in, or writing it all down into the base disk. This not meeting SLA needs configuration as normal. And it's basically what we can do now is just delete this node 2 virtual protection group. So we're going to go ahead and delete. We say we don't need to keep the recovery disk. Delete. And that'll take it out of my VPG list. And if we come back over to here, now we can see that Goldfinger is completely on its own. It's a normal VM again. So I'm going to go ahead and shut him down. There, it's shut down. So then the last step is to add, notice we only have one hard drive here, it's to add the other 3 hard disks in. The catch here, and if you've done SQL clusters in VMware, you already know this, but the catch here is that this SCSI identifier number needs to match between the 2 VMs. So for example, the hard disk Carver 3 is disk 10, disk 4 is 11, and disk number 1 is 12. So with that info in mind, I'm going to come back over to Goldfinger, and I'm going to go ahead and add a hard disk, existing disk. It's on the VNX is where the descriptors are. We're going to find Carver, and we'll do 3 first. Hit next, and if you remember, he was 10, so we'll pick 10. Add the next one. Number 4. He was 11. And then the last one is disk number 1. and he is 1-2 in SCSI terms. So I need that guy there. Like I said, he is number 1, disk or device 2. So basically what we're setting here is controller, disk on that controller. Hit finish. And then the only other thing that you'll want to check is on SCSI controller 1, make sure it's in physical sharing mode. So if it's not doing SCSI bus sharing, you want to set that to physical. And hit OK. Once that completes, you can power on Goldfinger again. You'll know pretty quick if you didn't configure that sharing mode properly, because the VM won't boot up. But once it is booted up, you can there we go. Go ahead and log in. If you remember right, like I said before, the SQL services have been on node 1 the whole time. So on my Carver node. So if I hit execute a few times, you'll see that we're still right at 1204 and 57, 1205. So we're right there. If I come back over, you'll see that Goldfinger is now back into the cluster. So this is the Carver node. You can see that Goldfinger is back up and running. The roles are still on Carver though. But if I wanted to say move my DTC role, go ahead and just say move to selected node. Oh, there he is. We'll grab Goldfinger, hit OK. And what you'll see in this is you'll see the DTC drive is gone from Carver. And it shows up just like normal on Goldfinger. Come back over to Failover Manager, and you notice that it's now running over there. We can do the same thing with the SQL services. So we can say move, select node, Goldfinger, OK. And if I watch in here, what you'll see is you'll see one of these fail. So basically, if it's not able to insert that command, you'll see that it's going to fail here in a second. At least it should fail, depending on when it was trying to do its insert command. Yep, there they go. So I had a couple of them fail. And basically, as soon as a few of them are done failing, then you'll see them take right back off. So obviously, if I try to run this command again, it's going to tell me, hey, you're now logged into the other node. So remember, I'm logged into the SQL. So actually, if I hit refresh here, you'll notice that it's just connected to the different node this time. This is connected to the SQL Cluster virtual IP. That's why I didn't get disconnected. I come back into SQL Manager. Now we're both on Goldfinger. So fully working SQL Cluster. If I want to move the roles back to the main node, that's fine. I can do that. So I can move them back to Carver. But the key takeaway here is that it took us, the video is less than 30 minutes long. Obviously, I paused during the synchronization processes, but the actual sit-down work time for the Zerto processes and the VMware processes is less than 30 minutes to move a SQL cluster anywhere that you want to take it that Zerto can replicate to. If you got any questions, definitely leave a comment in the blog post or shoot me an email. Either to justin@jpaul.me or justin.paul@zerto.com. Have a good one. Thanks.